Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 139 and a whole new calendar year. That's PEP or Planet Extra podcast. It's an offshoot of Planet America on the ABC Australia, which you can see on Friday at 8 p.m. on ABC News Channel. For now, we will be returning on Wednesdays as well in 2 weeks' time. And you can see us on iView on Facebook at ABC Planet America and on YouTube at the ABC In-Depth channel. On PEP, we cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. If you're listening, you can also see this podcast on Facebook and YouTube. And now I'd like to introduce for the first time in 2024, Dr. Pepper himself, Dr. Dave Smith.
Hi, everyone. I'm David Smith. I'm an associate professor at the United States Studies Centre at the University of Sydney. However, I don't speak on behalf of either of those institutions, especially not when I'm doing PEP.
Yeah. We get the best of Dr. Dave.
That's right. I speak on behalf of you.
Yeah. Now, this is going to be an interesting podcast for three reasons. Number one, we have exactly 1 hour and 50 on the battery.
Short by our standards.
So if I don't say goodbye, it just cuts out, you know I forgot we have an hour and 50. Number one. Number two, the entire place is being renovated at the moment and smells of glue.
Yes,
so
it does.
This could get freaky.
It really could.
We are huffing glue for the next hour and 50. And number three, Dr. Dave's been on holiday in a different continent where they don't have blogs, and you are fresh to a lot of stories we're going to talk about.
I am in a state of almost complete ignorance about everything. I'm in the state of nature. So I'm behind the veil of ignorance.
So I can tell you about American politics, and you can tell me about elephants. Let's see how
that's
we
right.
go. Although, despite the fact Dave doesn't know about some of the stories we're talking about, we are going to be talking about Dave's world of football, and
yes.
It will very much be reversed at that point in time.
Yeah.
But that's flagging for later on.
Yeah.
Tell us what you're grateful for, Dave.
I'm grateful for the United Republic of Tanzania. That's where I was hiding from American politics for 3 weeks. Fantastic.
They don't have any...
Highly recommended.
Any peppers
I saw
Tanzania?
No, but I did see a guy in a Parramatta Eels jersey on a motorbike in Zanzibar.
Did you see any actual eels?
Yes.
There you go. It's the place for eels of all kinds.
That's right.
Fair enough.
There's a lot more I could tell you, but this is an American politics podcast, damn it.
Fair enough. Well, after we do Planet Britain, we'll do Planet Tanzania. We're going to take over the world country by country. Let me tell you what I'm grateful for then.
Yes.
I'm grateful for the Peppers who soldiered all the way through the 6-hour Hunter Biden special. It went for 6 hours.
6 hours?
You might not know that. It went for actually 6 hours. Yes. Yes, 6 hours.
Okay.
Every minute was worth listening to.
You both sat there in the studio for 6 hours.
Well, we ended up doing it in a couple of sessions.
Right.
And Melina kind of checked out with about an hour to go. She had to, so I just did the last hour.
Over the last 20 years, Hunter Biden hasn't even been conscious for 6 hours.
That's fair. That's fair.
Okay.
It was a bit of a blow.
Wow. Well, yeah. Congratulations to everyone who soldiered through that one.
Well done. I apologize. I really dropped the ball though on it because I forgot to play the Hunter Biden music.
You didn't even play Hunter.
I could have played it 50 times during that podcast.
Wow.
So I apologize to everyone deeply. I just realized the moment I released the podcast, oh no, I screwed up. But anyway,
I'm going to assume that there's
not
not a category in the Guinness Book of World Records for this.
For the longest Hunter Biden podcast.
Yeah, but you would have smashed it.
I would have. Just like Hunter Biden did so many times. But now what I'm actually grateful for is a fellow called Judge Kevin Newsom. And don't worry, you shouldn't know who he is, Dave.
No.
Don't worry.
Kevin Newsom, that sounds very close to Gavin Newsom.
It is, but I don't think there's any relation.
Okay.
You might recall a while back, Ron Desantis sacked a few what he called Soros prosecutors.
I do remember that.
He said they were refusing to enforce criminal laws about abortion or transgender healthcare, so he sacked them with an executive order, and he's been boasting about it ever since, especially during the Republican debates. Well, one of those prosecutors is a guy called Andrew Warren. He sued Desantis for a violation of the First Amendment. Now, Desantis won in the district court.
Yep.
Because a Clinton-appointed judge, Judge Hinkle, found that even though DeSantis had clearly sacked Warren in bad faith, he'd established enough of a pretext that the court couldn't overrule him. They couldn't be 100% sure that it was bullshit. So they let him get away with it, even though the facts that they found didn't favour it.
Yep.
So then Warren appealed to the 11th Circuit. And last week in the 11th Circuit Appeals Court, Desantis got destroyed. There were 3 judges on the panel. Anne Conway, who's a H.W. Bush appointee. Jill Pryor, who's an Obama appointee. And Judge Kevin Newsom, who is a Trump appointee. This is what they found. Well, now, first of all, to be clear, Florida's constitution does allow the governor to sack prosecutors for neglect of duty or malfeasance, which is what Desantis alleged, if that's what you're actually doing. The court said this is definitely not what Desantis did.
Right.
The court said Desantis directed his aides to find him a prosecutor he could make an example out of. And Andrew Warren was a high-profile critic of DeSantis' legal agenda at the time. And the court found that DeSantis came up with a pretext to sack him. And it wasn't enough to disguise that he was actually sacking him for being a critic. The court found that they spent months setting Warren up with this pretext, and they pretended that they reviewed all the state attorneys before targeting Warren. That was not true. They did not. And importantly, they never found any evidence that Warren ordered his staff to avoid any prosecutions for abortion or transgender healthcare. No evidence of that at all. In fact, they found evidence that Andrew Warren had done nothing to jeopardize public safety, but then they disregarded that evidence and buried it. And they sacked him anyway. And the way it was announced, the sacking, was DeSantis going on Tucker Carlson to announce that he was sacking Warren.
Was Warren the Hillsborough County guy?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't have it in my notes, unfortunately. So the 11th Circuit sent the case back to the district court with the very heavy implication that the district court should find in favour of Warren. The court essentially found DeSantis abused his office to punish Warren because of his predicate speech. Now, the reason I'm grateful for Judge Kevin Newsom is because not only did he agree with this judgment,
Yes.
but he wrote his own extra concurrence where he went even harder than the judgment. He went harder than the Obama judge.
Okay.
He went real hard. He backed over the whole case, underlining just how disturbed he was by this violation of Warren's free speech. And look, this guy is young. He's one of those 50-year-old type judges.
Yeah.
He's a Trump judge, and he's done. If he dissented, they still would have. They still have lost the case. DeSantis still lost the case 2-1, right?
Yeah.
So he could have done that if he wanted to. He could have just shut up and just agreed with the verdict 3-0. But no, he went out of his way to write a concurrence that put a target on his back to make sure that he pissed off all the right-wing activists who were never, ever, ever going to allow him to become a Supreme Court justice.
Never.
He's done. But he did it anyway. And just because he presumably thought it was the right thing to do. So good on you.
There you go.
I am grateful for you, Kevin Newsom.
Okay.
Good on him. So anyway,
Yes.
now let's get into the main content. We're not going to be doing Lloyd Austin stuff. You probably don't even know what I'm talking about, the Lloyd Austin stuff.
Something to do with the hospital.
Very good. Very good.
Yes.
That will do. If anyone's interested in my views on Lloyd Austin, go to Planet America last week. We started last week. I spent a long time on Lloyd Austin on Planet America. You can see what I think about that. Essentially, I'm blaming his secretary more than him. We're not going to talk about Chris Christie dropping out unless you particularly want to bring it up in the primary. No, exactly. If you want to,
He's still got 35 votes though,
which is almost more than Asa Hutchinson. We'll get to that. Once again, watch last week's Play America if you're interested in that. We're going to do a bit of catching up today and next week and the week after because there's a lot of stuff we've missed. But let's get a couple of quickies out of the way and updates. Number one, Trump was right. Trump was right. I'm not going to put this in the blurb because the last time I put Trump was right in the blurb, we got sanctioned by YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I'm not going to...
Rightly so.
So I'm not going to be doing that.
Rightly so.
Trump was right. The 2020 vote count was officially wrong. I'm not sure you heard this.
No, I didn't.
Trump totally vindicated. Prince William County Office of Elections in Northern Virginia has confessed to an underreporting error in the 2020 election.
Yeah.
Joe Biden's vote margin in Virginia is now officially 4,000 votes more. So there you go. Well done, Trump. You saw it coming. You were right. We were wrong. You can tweet Trump your apologies.
Wow.
So there you go.
Look, is this a reminder? Things often go wrong in elections.
Yeah.
The things always go wrong in elections. Usually they're fairly innocuous or innocent mistakes. Sometimes they're not. But the point is, it is very, very rare that there is a margin small enough that a mistake or even a bad faith act actually affects the margin very much. And this is a good example. It was one that I was unaware of, but 4,000 votes and doesn't really affect the outcome whatsoever.
No, exactly, yeah. And by the way, I wasn't going to bring this up in the Iowa section, which is coming very soon, but like if you're really that worried about voter security, and I am, I think that's a fair thing to worry about.
Yes, yeah.
Maybe during your primary, don't pass around a paper bag for people to put their votes into, or a popcorn bucket for people to put their votes into.
Oh, but that's the charm of these caucuses, Chaz.
Yeah.
It's not really about democracy.
Yeah.
It's about getting together and eating popcorn and then putting a vote in the empty bucket.
Pay attention, California. This is the argument you make in about 10 months' time. Another update. Claudine Gay, you might recall we talked a bit about her in our Christmas PEP. Yes. Christmas PEP episode. She resigned. She was the president of Harvard. She was one of the 3 university presidents that Elise Stefanik chewed out. In the end, she resigned not because of her testimony about anti-Semitism on campus, but because of a number of credible plagiarism claims about her academic work in the past. Now, those were publicised by Christopher Rufo, who's a conservative activist. He pushed them real hard. But a lot of the grunt work should be on this was done by actually the Washington Free Beacon. They were a little bit less public about it than Christopher Rufo was, but they did a lot.
Everyone's less public about everything than Christopher Rufo.
That's right. And he was very public, as you say. Look, to be clear, some of those claims were quite minor. Some of them weren't. There was a lot of focus on Rufo because he likes it that way. But also he'd announced on Twitter beforehand that he was going to, quote, smuggle the story into the media apparatus from the left, which legitimizes the narrative of the centre-left actors who have the power to topple her. I can see why that would piss people off. I can see why that would cause them to circle the wagons around Claudine Gay because they go, well, this guy's arguing in bad faith. I would argue if she's guilty, she's guilty. It doesn't matter who is making the accusation, whether in bad faith or not. But anyway, she ended up resigning. Bill Ackman got involved. You might recall the billionaire who we talked about last year. He tried to get a list of every student who belonged to what he saw as an anti-Israel group, blacklisted for life from any financial job. He decided he was an expert on plagiarism. And that Gay had to go. And I'm sure that had nothing to do with the Israel barrow that he's pushing at the moment.
Yeah.
But then soon after she resigned, Business Insider wrote an expose about Bill Ackman's wife's alleged plagiarism from Wikipedia, of all things, for her thesis. And he went absolutely nuts. He said it was unfair to go after people's wives and they didn't give her enough time to reply to the allegations. He said a bunch of things. I don't know if you know this. He writes literally 2,000-word essays on Twitter. Oh, Jesus. He's the direct opposite of Elon Musk. Elon Musk thinks he's an expert on everything and he weighs in with 1-word replies. Bill Ackman thinks he's an expert on everything and weighs in with 2,000-word replies. Anyway, a lot of rants.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I prefer the Elon approach.
I do too.
Okay.
I do too. Now, to be clear and fair here, I don't think Neri Oxman, that's her name, I don't think her examples were all that bad. Still embarrassing because it's taking stuff on Wikipedia. And also, his wife is probably better known than Ackman is. She's been on the cover of magazines.
Yes.
Bill Ackman is never going to be on the cover of a magazine.
Yes.
Even Twitter Dickheads Weekly, he will never make the cover of. But I do think that it's a little poor to try to attack Ackman through his wife, which is what they were doing, obviously. But at the same time, it doesn't justify his reaction, which was so over the top, so hugely entitled. He raged on Twitter for weeks, and he announced his own initiative to personally check on every single MIT scholar, their entire back catalogue, to see if they'd been plagiarized. He blamed MIT for dobbing her in, essentially. And that's the way he's rolling at the moment. This is Bill Ackman, right?
Okay.
And that was very. And also, he was saying that he'd surely find heaps of offenders because everyone has unintentionally committed small acts of plagiarism. Very much not his view when he was talking about Claudine Gay.
That's what I was going to say. Hang on.
But anyway, and he also went straight to the owner of Business Insider to try and get the article removed, apologise for, and the editor potentially disciplined for it. So essentially, he is a giant asshat.
Yes.
Would you like to add anything at this point in time?
Look, because I haven't been following this, and because actually dealing with plagiarism is a significant part of my academic job.
Yeah.
I don't want to say anything about Claudine Gay because I have not looked at
fair enough.
any of the allegations. This is one area where I really should actually look at it fairly carefully before weighing in.
And I did offer you the opportunity, and you rightly said no, thank you.
Yes.
Yes. But now I brought it up anyway.
All I will say is, though, plagiarism as a category does encompass a broad range of things.
Yeah.
And for anybody who looks at plagiarism or academic dishonesty cases as part of their job will actually be used to looking at a lot of cases of genuinely unintentional plagiarism. Because, there are all kinds of ways to be careless. There are all kinds of ways to take notes and then, forget that you are directly attributing it from somewhere or something like that. Accidental plagiarism is actually fairly commonplace. From some of the things that I have heard about the Claudine Gay case, this is from the earlier stages of it before Christmas, including from one of the scholars whose work she supposedly said that he plagiarized. It was more to do with sort of bad literature review practices rather than anything that we would call plagiarism. But this is the problem with weaponizing plagiarism politically is, as Bill Ackman has so presciently pointed out, you're potentially going to find a lot of it if you really go looking for it. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, all I'll say is that Bill Ackman, who announced he was going to find so much, so far has found zero. But he might have given up on that. As I said, he is a bit of an asshat.
Yeah, by the way, I will also say, there are lots of cases of genuinely intentional, disgraceful plagiarism out there. That's not limited to academia either. So I'm not letting everyone off the hook here. Okay, if you're a plagiarist, I'm not giving you a rubber stamp here, right? But all I'm saying is that the weaponization of it can lead to some pretty bad faith action. Yes,
and also to be fair to Bill Ackman, he may not have had time to find the plagiarism because he's too busy opinionating on every single other topic on earth on Twitter at the moment. He really has taken his place in the pantheon of entitled billionaires who think they know everything about everything. They kind of think they're the modern day Socrates, if you will. Well,
he should do what Socrates did then.
What's that?
Drink hemlock. No, I'll give it a go. I bet you could do it better than Socrates could.
I have no doubt. Prove it. And while you drink the hemlock, just write down how you're feeling as you're going. You might have 2,000 words left in you. You never know.
Let me just clarify. I'm not actually encouraging anybody to drink hemlock.
No, but I am encouraging Bill Ackman to stop tweeting.
Yes.
Honestly, the comparison, I was trying to think to myself, what is it about billionaires thinking that they have such valuable opinions on Twitter? It's kind of, to me, it's kind of like Bowerbirds.
Yeah.
Like they're like a bowerbird that happened upon a treasure trove of like the Australian flag, like a pack of tubes, a Pepsi can, lots of blue shit, right? And they got all this blue stuff, and they think because they got so much more blue stuff than everyone else that their stupid, idiotic little dance is more important than everyone else's. But no, you're still an idiot bird dancing for everyone's amusement, okay? You are not more important. I wish, if there's one message I can get through on PEP, it's that no one is important. You are not more important. Don't pretend you are.
There you go, Peppers. I'm going to declare it now. You are not going to hear a more evocative metaphor in 2024 than that.
It's an early call. One more Bill Ackman thing. I know it's become the Bill Ackman update. But do you know he just sunk $1 million into guess who?
Who?
Who would a billionaire invest in? Which politician would a billionaire be most likely to invest in?
Ron DeSantis.
Not quite. Dean Phillips.
Oh!
Bill thinks he's got a viable pathway. And so him and Elon Musk, because of course Elon Musk likes Dean Phillips too, had a little Twitter chat with Dean Phillips to promote him. That's possibly the most billionaire thing you could do, outside of maybe conducting the same chat where you're all on segways.
Yes.
It's the only thing that'd be more billionaire. Anyway, we shouldn't waste any more time on Bill Ackman. Do you have anything to say about Bill Ackman?
No, nothing more. No.
Let's talk Iowa. Dave, go.
Okay, so this is one thing I have been paying attention to because it happened a couple of days after I got back. So Iowa, the most notable thing about it was exactly how in line it was with the polling. And I think that's one of the most important things to come out of it is we are not going to see any hidden anti-Trump vote coming out of these votes. So Trump got 51% of the vote. All of the polling was around there.
Yep.
DeSantis got 21%. Haley got 19%.
Yep.
That's around about where all the polling was. There was a Seltzer poll the day before that suggested that Haley would come second, but by and large, very much in line.
But the number was the same. The Seltzer poll had Haley at 18.8. She got 19.1.
Yeah.
So, in fact, the only difference in the Seltzer poll was DeSantis got 21.2 instead of 16.
Okay.
And he's the guy who had all the organisation.
Yes.
So you would expect him to have the advantage.
Yes. Yeah,
Apart from that, everyone was almost identical to the Seltzer
So DeSantis
poll.
poured everything into Iowa and was still a very distant third behind Trump. So, I mean, it just seems very, very obvious from that Trump is going to be the nominee.
Yeah.
And especially the way that the result turned out in the end with DeSantis coming second, so dethroning any kind of momentum that Haley had, that, you know, if Haley had come second, maybe she should have claimed, I am the rightful competitor to Trump.
She did.
Yeah.
Like she did anyway.
Yes, she did it anyway. Yeah, but I mean,
she said that that Iowa proved there were only two people left in the race. She came third.
That is an odd take. That is an odd take. But at the same time, DeSantis didn't get enough votes given everything he had poured into it to himself. So this is basically an ideal result from Trump. But do you think Trump sees it that way? I don't think so. Even though biggest victory in the history of Iowa, like he's essentially the incumbent and he got 51% of the vote. Now, for someone who has been striving for the appearance of absolute unanimity, I think he was probably quite irked by that result. And I think evidence for that is how much effort he's actually putting into these primaries. Trump is putting more effort into these primaries than J.D. Vance put into his Senate race, which was actually competitive, and where he was going for election for the first time. Like, Trump is putting serious effort into this. You know, he was turning up at a lot of Iowa events in those sub-zero Fahrenheit temperatures. By the way, an interesting piece of trivia?
Yes.
Iowa is closer to the equator than it is to the North Pole.
Really?
Yes. But the thing is...
So why so cold?
There is basically nothing between the North Pole and Iowa. Right, so I've experienced this before in the Midwest because Ann Arbor, where I lived, is also closer slightly to the equator than it is to the North Pole. But those Arctic winds howl down from the Canadian prairies. When that wind blows and it gets below 0 Fahrenheit, conventional gloves do not keep the cold out. It cuts right through your hands. It's I think the coldest I experienced was I can't remember whether it was Celsius or Fahrenheit, but it was minus 25. That's kind of like the crossover point between Celsius and Fahrenheit anyway. Incredibly cold. So congratulations to all the people who came out to exercise their democratic rights in that weather. The turnout was down a little bit.
Yep.
So it was 110,000 people.
Yep.
In 2016, it had been 186,000. I'm not going to read too much into that. And not just because of the weather, but because everyone actually understood this wasn't a competitive race. And no matter how much people were excitedly saying, oh, maybe reduced turnout from the cold will boost one of Trump's rivals. Like, no, it's not going to. Like, I think everybody actually understood this. The only people who are still pretending that it is a race are media outlets who are commercially invested in in the idea that it's still a race.
Just before you go on, just on the weather.
Yes.
I don't think people realise how much colder it was than any other time in history in an Iowa caucus.
Yes.
Like the Harry Enton went back
Yep.
and he found the coldest Iowa caucus was 1988 when they had a wind chill of 14 degrees.
Wow.
Fahrenheit, that is,
Yes.
which is minus 10 Celsius. The wind chill on Monday was in the minus 30s, minus 35 degrees Celsius. It was 25 degrees colder than the previous record.
Bracing conditions.
Which also makes sense.
Yes.
Why Ron DeSantis was the only one who outperformed his polls.
Yes,
because he was the one who had his voters absolutely locked in with his organisation.
Yes, yeah.
So there's almost no doubt, I would have thought, that both Haley and Trump would have lost voters because of the weather.
Yeah, probably.
Which is particularly weird because, did you see the Laura Loomer tweet?
No.
As a general of thumb, I think people try to not see the Laura Loomer tweet. She tweeted out the following.
Yes.
Is the deep state activating HAARP to disrupt the Iowa caucus? HAARP is the supposed deep state program to control the weather. We all know Nikki Haley has a lot of friends in the defense industry and military industrial complex. She's losing in Iowa, and now Iowa is set to get hit with a once-in-a-decade blizzard as Donald Trump is set to dominate the Iowa caucus. Is the deep state using HARP to rig the Iowa caucus? Looks like weather manipulation to me.
Wow.
So
I'm just imagining Nikki Haley in a darkened room pulling out a cell phone and saying, turn on the fans.
turn on the fans to make sure I get my ass kicked. Because all my supporters have just agreed to support me in the last 2 days. They're perfectly situated to not turn up. Good thinking, Nikki and Laura. Anyway, so I just want to add that in so you keep on going there.
And so a few other things, yes, Republican rules are very clear. You actually have to turn up on the night.
Yep.
But Iowa, in many ways, is not a true caucus for the Republicans. It's sort of almost like a cross between a caucus and a primary because there's actually a secret ballot at the end of it.
Kind of secret. It's a paper bag.
Yeah.
You can look if you want.
Yeah. Semi-secret, Midwestern honor system secret ballot, as opposed to what the Democrats used to have in the Iowa caucus, which is the whole actual tedious process of people having to try to persuade each other and getting together in rooms and going through multiple rounds of this shit. If you are wondering what happened to the Democratic caucus, well, very sadly, it has now been changed into a vote that lasts 2 months. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One was the debacle of the Iowa caucuses last time around, which is this is what happens when you try to introduce technology into a process like this, where your voters are mostly 80-year-olds who perhaps don't have the best understanding of what's going on. That if you remember, they could not get a result out of the Democratic caucus. So first caucus in the country, and this was when it was actually a very contentious and competitive race, and they could not even get a result.
It took them like a week to work out the Buttigieg one, didn't it?
Yeah. Massive embarrassment. But the other thing was that Biden came fourth. And, Biden didn't want that happening again. And so, on the argument that African Americans should get a voice early on in the process, South Carolina got moved up.
To be fair, I mean, look, who knows what's going through Biden's head? I mean, Biden knew if he was running again, it would be as the incumbent president.
Yes.
He didn't need to worry about Iowa.
No.
So I don't think it was just to make sure he was okay.
No. I'm being a bit facetious.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, but people do say that.
Yeah.
I have seen people say it seriously, right? So, but what I think it was actually going on there, I don't think it was just to reward South Carolina for looking after him.
Which it did.
Yeah, it definitely looked after him. But I think what it's about is about the Democrats, and Biden is part of this, trying to find ways to come up with the most token possible ways to endear themselves to the black community.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what it's about.
That is very true, yes.
Yes. Go on.
Yeah. But anyway, yes, Republicans had to turn up to this caucus to have their secret ballot in the popcorn bag, and that's why turnout was so low. So I'm not going to read a huge amount into into the low turnout. I don't think.
Well, it's actually just to add,
Yes.
just add one thing. The Dispatch spoke to one of their local experts,
Yep.
like one of these old timey Iowa champs, who a week before, or it was more than a week, about 3 days before, whose prediction for turnout was 120,000 based on the weather.
Yeah.
So 110,000 is pretty much what they expected.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even really low turnout.
No.
For what they expected with
and
the
as
weather.
I say, it was a non-competitive race, which everyone realised. In the same way that every time I go to an academic conference, I learn about the existence of universities I'd never heard of before. Every time the college basketball tournament takes place every year, I learn about colleges I'd never heard of before. In the same way, these contests reveal candidates I'd never heard of before. Imagine my surprise when I see Ryan Binkley.
Yeah.
Ryan Binkley, who did not come last.
No, imagine Asa Hutchinson's surprise.
Ryan Binkley got
kicking his ass.
1,700 votes. Asa got 191.
Yeah.
Yes. So congratulations. So Ryan Binkley is a pastor.
He's
of
a
some
pastor,
kind.
yeah.
Who got Binkley Mentum.
And he hasn't dropped out. Vivek dropped out. Asa Hutchinson dropped out, but Ryan Binkley still. He held a little press conference where he was playing I'm Still Standing.
Wow.
It was.
How had we missed him?
I don't think it's that hard to miss him. Really?
So obviously never qualified for the debates.
No. At his Iowa
But managed to get on the ballot.
Yeah. At his Iowa party.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that hard to get on the ballot.
Yeah.
At his party to celebrate his 0.7%, there were 30 people there.
Wow.
Yeah. So some people know who he is.
Yeah. Okay.
Ryan Binkley Mentum. Actually, before you go on, let me just say one thing about Vivek. Since I brought him up, I don't want to bring him up again.
Yeah.
First of all, full credit to him. He really squeezed as much juice out of that orange as anyone possibly could.
Yes.
He really did. Like, if you asked me 6 months back,
Yes.
how much of a splash is Vivek Ramaswamy going to make, I would not have said he would make as much of a splash as he has. Also, he worked damn hard.
He did.
He went to every county in Iowa twice. He did twice. And he also, I'll give him credit, he came up with the most creative angle in the final week of the campaign. I'm not sure you saw this.
Yeah.
He had a whole bunch of people in T-shirts that said, "Save Trump, vote Vivek." And his logic was this. The deep state weren't going to let Trump win. So the way to help Trump is to elect Vivek, because Vivek is Trump's number one fan. And then Vivek will look after Trump. And then Trump got really pissed off.
Yeah.
So Trump responded.
This is the only time that he's actually attacked Vivek.
Yeah.
Yes.
Vivek started his campaign as a great supporter, the best president in generations, etc. Unfortunately, now all he does is disguise his support in the form of deceitful campaign tricks. Very sly, but a vote for Vivek is a vote for the other side. Don't get duped by this. Vote for Trump. Don't waste your vote. Vivek is not MAGA. And how did Vivek respond? I'll read you his response. This is classic Vivek.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw President Trump's Truth Social post. It's an unfortunate move by his campaign advisors. Doesn't blame Trump. I don't think friendly fire is helpful. Donald Trump was the greatest president of the 21st century. I'm not going to criticize him in response to this late attack. I've met tens of thousands of Iowans across 390 plus events here, and they're deeply worried. So am I. That this system will not allow Donald J. Trump anywhere near the White House again. It seems they will stop at nothing to keep him away from power. We have to open our eyes. Last time it was a man-made pandemic and big tech election interference. Now the same billionaires funding the lawsuits against Trump are the ones trying to prop Nikki Haley. The same MSM blasting Trump is lavishing praise on Nikki. They want to narrow this down to a two-horse race between Trump and Haley and eliminate Trump one way or another, and then trot out their puppet into the White House. We can't fall for that trap. 1 year from now, we won't look back and say we were shocked it happened. We'll kick ourselves for not stopping it. He's creative. Didn't work. But Give him credit for the creative ideas.
Look, he worked very hard to be one of the most annoying candidates this year, which is that is really
that's astonishing.
Really saying something. Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, that's how you get your name out there.
Yeah.
By less than halfway through the first debate, the Republican electorate was already completely polarized by whether they loved how annoying he was or hated how annoying he was.
Yeah.
So he's got a great future in the absolute gutters of the media.
He's definitely going to be a media figure, I think. But anyway, I interrupted you. Keep going.
I don't think that there's that much more to say about Iowa. Actually, although just on the visited every counties thing, it's now been decades that people have been looking for new ways to do the I visited every county in Iowa bullshit. So now every fucking primary, there's a race to see who's the first to visit all 99 counties. I think it was Desantis this time around.
Oh, well, I don't know if it was Desantis.
I don't think anyone's going to top, I think, was it Jimmy Carter visited every county on a bicycle?
It was a motorcycle?
unicycle. Unicycle. That's the next step. But the amount of people who have wasted colossal amounts of energy on visiting every county in Iowa. And DeSantis' campaign said just before the caucus, and I believe this is completely truthful. This is the most truthful thing his campaign has said. They said literally every caucus goer in Iowa would have either met DeSantis or would have had an opportunity to meet DeSantis. I think that's absolutely true. Yeah. And I think that is why 80% of them didn't vote. Maybe they actually should have not visited Iowa at all. That probably would have got him more votes.
I was doing pretty well for Trump. Because I was going to say, I want to disagree with you with something you said before about Trump, which was in the last couple of days, he went real hard. I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
But until then, he barely campaigned in Iowa at all. Which is actually, I actually think that it, what you're saying is correct, that Trump is as de facto incumbent.
Yes, yeah.
And 50% is not a great result for a de facto incumbent. But I do think a lot of things weren't going his way. Not going his way is the wrong term. I do think that he left a lot of votes on the table. I think he didn't campaign nearly as hard as he could have. I don't think until the last week, basically, and when I think he was starting to get worried by the polls. I think that he didn't spend. He spent almost no money. He spent very little money. I think I've got the screen.
By the way, just to reiterate, when we're talking about Trump getting worried by the polls, we're not doing the never Trumper on CNN wishful thinking thing about there's a possibility that he'll lose. No, there's no possibility that he'll lose.
Oh, no, he's definitely going to lose.
He wants unanimity.
Yeah.
He would be unhappy with 75%. He would be unhappy with 85%.
He wants to end this. Yes. If not in New Hampshire, then in South Carolina.
Yes.
That's when he wants to end it, right? I was going to say, with ad spending, Haley spent $37 million in Iowa. DeSantis spent $35 million. So Haley outspent DeSantis in Iowa.
Imagine what that $72 million could have been spent on. Seriously.
I saw some wonderful ads, Dave. I can't imagine anything more useful. And Trump spent $18 million.
Does $37 million get spent in an entire Australian election campaign?
I got no
National
idea.
Australian election campaign? So, someone tell us the answer to that, Peppers. I really don't know. Maybe I'm massively underestimating.
Please tell me they didn't spend $37 million on that hole in the bucket ad. Christ. Anyway, but Trump spent half what they spent. He spent $18 million. So his super PAC spent that.
Yeah.
All the other candidates combined spent $33 million.
How much did Binkley spend?
I don't know. It's part of $33 million. DeSantis had all the key endorsements. Haley was smashing Trump in general election polling. And Trump had his vote divided by Ramaswamy and DeSantis. So there were a lot of votes on the table that he may have got, and he still whipped them.
Yes.
And by the way, he won in every single county except for one.
Yes. Johnson County.
And that one, he only lost by one vote.
Yes, a rare example of an election that is so close that actually a bit of popcorn bag shenanigans might have affected that outcome.
Sorry, I interrupted. What were you about to say?
I think also we need to abandon the idea that if there was only one challenger to Trump, that they would stand a chance. Yes, Trump only got 51% of the vote, But my estimate would be that of that 21% that went to DeSantis, about 20% of that would go to Trump. If DeSantis was, by 20% of that, I mean...
almost all of it.
Almost all of it.
Yeah.
I think would go to Trump.
Totally.
Not to Haley.
Well, I've got a theory about Haley.
I think most of Chris Christie's vote probably went to Haley.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I've got a theory about Haley, which I'm going to lead up to in a second.
Okay.
But first, I'll just note a couple of entrance polls,
Yes.
which I did talk about on Planet America, but just for those who missed it. Number one, Trump owned Iowa for a long time because 65% made up their mind more than a month ago, and he won 66% of those.
Yep.
There's no gender gap.
Yep.
Women 53% support Trump. Men 49% support Trump. So more women support Trump than men.
Yes.
And Haley, there's no gender gap for either. Like the gender thing doesn't seem to be a thing in the Republicans. Religion, white evangelicals, 53% went to Trump. 49% of everyone else went to Trump. So there was no advantage there, really.
Yeah.
But education,
Yes.
67% of some college or less went to Trump. 37% of college voters went to Trump.
Yes.
Still the most out of the field, but only just. Haley and DeSantis did much better with college voters.
Yes.
Ideology, 61% very conservative voters went to Trump.
Yes.
22% of moderate voters went to Trump. It's the opposite for Haley.
Yeah.
She won 63% of moderates,
Yeah.
5% of very conservatives, 34% of independents, 15% of Republicans, 28% of college graduates, 9% of the rest. Basically, the conclusion I'm drawing is Haley is not the candidate of Republicans.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
That's why she is not going to win the Republican primary.
Yep.
She might do well in New Hampshire because that's the primary of not Republicans.
Yes.
But she has an approval rating amongst Republicans of 48%. 48-46
Yes.
is her approval rating.
This is despite the fact that polling shows she would smash it in a general election.
Totally.
She would do a lot better than any other Republican in the field.
And by the way, she's really bitten the concrete in the last couple of months amongst Republicans because her approval rating in August was 53% to 26%.
Yes.
So she's lost 20%. She's gained 20% of disapproval and lost 5% of approval since August, right? DeSantis' approval rating amongst Republicans is 62%.
Yes, yeah.
14% more than Haley's.
Yes, yeah.
Trump's is 77%. So Haley is not going to win the primary for that reason.
Yeah.
But this also cuts both ways. Her strength amongst independents shows a weakness in Trump for independents. The Seltzer poll showed 43% of Iowa GOP Haley supporters said that they would vote for Biden if she wasn't the nominee.
Wow.
That's a problem for Trump.
Yes.
He has spent the last 8 years threatening to take his ball and go home if people don't supplicate to him. Two can play at that game. Haley can take her ball and go home as well.
Yes.
And she's controlling a lot of votes he might need, which is interesting. In 2016, Trump was the candidate for independents.
Yes.
Now he's the candidate of hardcore conservatives. He has actually become synonymous with Republicanism.
Yes.
So now independents don't rate him anymore.
Yes.
And that's a problem in the general election. I noted on the show, 31% on the entrance polls said that he would not be fit to be president if he was convicted of a felony. Which doesn't mean they won't vote for him because they might hate Biden more.
Yes.
But the New York Times Siena poll had a quarter of Republicans saying they would vote for Biden over Trump if Trump was convicted. A quarter of Republicans. Now, a number of them will come over.
Yeah.
You don't need many.
No.
5%, 6% is all you need to lose an election.
Yes.
57% of independents, according to the Washington Post, say that Trump is being treated fairly with his trials. That makes him very, very, very vulnerable to the outcomes of those trials.
Yes. Which is why his lawyers are trying to make sure those trials don't actually happen before the election.
And we're about to come to that.
I just want to mention something.
Yes.
The Taiwan election, which we've
Yes,
already
please do.
decided we're not going to discuss because it's way too interesting and way too important for us to discuss it without knowing anything about it.
But jump in.
Taiwan, there is no polling allowed within the last 10 days of the election. And there are no exit polls allowed either. Now, I mean, that's got disadvantages in the sense that exit polls can be quite useful for these kinds of purposes of slicing up who voted for what. But it's an interesting sort of alternative world where actually going into the election, you don't have this really up-to-date polling information. I'm not quite sure why that is. I think they see it as a way of maintaining the integrity of the election. In Taiwan, results get counted very quickly. The results were known for about 2 to 3 hours of the election. But anyway, another world is possible. The other extreme of that, of course, is there are plenty of places where the exit poll basically is the result. There are lots of countries where the exit polls are so accurate that basically they know the result almost as soon as the election happens. In Israel, they usually know within to a fairly precise amount exactly how the votes have gone. Israel, though, is very complicated because the seats and coalition negotiation agreements take so long. Britain, with the exit poll they have, nearly always gets the result. Nearly always gets the result right, but not always, and it can be very close. It can be very drawn out, as it was in 2010, because exit polls are only going to give you an approximation of the percentage of the vote. When it actually comes down to translating the vote into seats, it's not so good. So anyway, that was a tangent.
No, that's all right. Do you want to? I'll give you the option here, Dave.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about the tactics that Haley and Desantis have employed, or are you not interested in that?
Not particularly.
All right, let's move on because we've got a lot to talk about. And I'm looking at that battery.
I really think that race is over.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Oh, well, the DeSantis one is more a retrospective thing, whether he made a mistake in the amount he attacked Trump or not.
He made a mistake in getting involved.
Yeah, I just don't think DeSantis was ever going to beat Trump in hindsight. In hindsight, I mean, I might have said something differently a year ago.
Massive act of hubris.
Yeah.
Albeit encouraged by a lot of very dumb billionaires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are now moving on to Dean Phillips. Okay, let's move on then. Just before we do, little toilet break. This is a nice little toilet break.
Mm-hmm.
Trump supporters say the darndest things, Dave. I don't get much darnder than this.
Joe Biden has been dead since 2019. James Woods, the actor, is playing Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe Poopy Pants. But the president is trying to get us back down with our economy because...
So he is the president.
Yes, he never conceded. He is very much the president of the republic. Biden has been doing all his White House pictures out there in California at Black Rock Studio with the fake green screen.
And so...
He doesn't even live in the White House. Nobody lives in White House.
Oh, so he's in California?
Yeah.
Okay. The weirdest claim there is not that Biden's been dead since 2019.
Yeah.
That, that in its own way is plausible. The weirdest claim is that James Woods would be playing Biden. James Woods is the most right-wing actor in Hollywood.
To be fair...
No one...
go finish your point.
Yeah. With the possible exception of John Voight, maybe Clint Eastwood.
No. He's very right-wing.
But Woods is crazier than all of them.
Yeah, that's not my point. My point is that, I mean, I don't know if this guy's got any logic at all, but to the extent that he could have logic, the argument might be you want a right-winger who's playing Joe Biden to allow Donald Trump to president undisturbed in the background so he doesn't get assassinated by the people who are out to get him. You see? Donald Trump can in secret. Because in secret, he's been president.
No, okay.
So you need someone to enable Donald Trump to be the secret president.
Okay.
And just to be clear, also, maybe you're confused by this. Maybe this is what's confusing you.
Yes, I am very confused.
Maybe this is what's confusing you. I should explain.
Yeah.
Then when he said Biden is living in a green screen in California, he meant James Woods, the actor.
Right, okay, yes.
Not Biden, because Biden's dead.
Yeah.
Because that might have confused you.
Okay.
So I don't think you have any more questions after that. No,
No.
Take
That
care of that.
all makes total sense.
Okay, then let's
Yeah.
move on to the stats nugget. Stats nugget.
First one of 2024. What is it?
I've got a couple of economics ones. This is an interesting one. Sorry, Dave. No, just interesting.
Yeah.
Manufacturing. The manufacturing sector in America is large. I'll
Yes.
tell you how large it is. In 2021, America ranks second in the world in terms of total manufacturing output. That's not a surprise.
Yes.
China obviously number one. But this was a surprise to me, at least.
What?
Their manufacturing sector has greater output than Japan, Germany, and South Korea combined.
Wow.
That's pretty big.
That is pretty big.
The 2021 US manufacturing sector by itself,
Yes.
just the manufacturing sector, would have been the world's 8th largest economy that
Wow. But
Yeah?
do you know what percentage of the US workforce manufacturing is?
year. It's not much.
It's like 11%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not much because they're very efficient.
Yes.
If you compare their manufacturing sector to China's, they get it's like 15 times the bang for buck in terms of output versus worker. The worker cost because obviously they're very, very efficient. Oh, one more thing. In 2022, the manufacturing output was greater than Japan, Germany, South Korea, and India combined.
Wow.
So it's becoming even more.
Okay.
Another really interesting thing, this is just a little aside.
Yes.
I should put a graph up, but I don't have it on me. Is, in fact, I'm going to put up a graph. I'll find it for
Yes,
you.
yeah.
That there are amazing graphs out there for the increase in factory spending under Joe Biden. Because one thing Joe Biden's done, it's stimulate the manufacturing sector.
Yes,
In terms of spending on factories, right?
Yes, yeah.
Huge increase in
Yes.
spending,
Yeah,
historic increase. Okay, so you're looking at the graph right there. It's like a cliff essentially.
Yeah.
But the increase in output, it's basically zero. Now maybe it takes a while for this stuff to filter through. You're building a factory; it takes a couple of years before you're producing anything.
Yeah.
Right? Or maybe it's less efficient, or maybe I don't know what the answer is, but at least so far,
Yeah.
there's no commensurate increase in output.
It's because all that anyone's producing now is bullshit.
Hey, he's back. Woo!
Yeah, the 1980s. Noam Chomsky and Edward Herman wrote their famous critique of the American media and foreign policy, Manufacturing Consent.
That's true.
If they're writing it now, it'd probably be called Manufacturing Content.
Talking about which, we've got some legal content to manufacture right
okay.
here. This is the part where Dave checks out.
Yep.
Okay, so there's been so many legal cases in the intervening weeks. I thought while you were still catching up on stuff, I just rattle through a bunch of
Yes,
them.
go for it.
Now, just so I don't talk for the next 45 minutes straight, please jump in.
Okay.
I'll ask you for thoughts, but I'm aware
I think the battery might put an end to this monologue. But anyway, yeah.
I'm aware you haven't been following this stuff. So
Okay.
I'm going to keep asking you for thoughts.
Okay.
Let's start with Colorado, which is obviously the one that everyone wants to talk about.
Yes.
Now, in December, the Colorado Supreme Court ruled that Trump's candidacy was unconstitutional. Supreme Court is hearing these arguments in 2 weeks' time, February 8, I believe.
Yep.
I'm not going to give this the full treatment now. I just want to give you a bit of a summary going through the key elements to remind you, because we have talked about this before, but I want to go through
I
more
actually
detail.
do know about this because
Oh, great.
this all happened before Christmas.
That's true.
Okay,
That's true.
so there are
Okay.
3 key elements, remember.
Okay, let's
Yes.
start with, wasn't it insurrection?
Yes.
That's a pretty key element. The Colorado Supreme Court, unsurprisingly, said that January 6th was insurrection.
Yes.
They defined, and this, for me, this is all about what's the definition of an insurrection.
Yep.
They defined an insurrection as a concerted and public use of force or threat of force by a group of people to hinder or prevent the US government from taking the actions necessary to accomplish a peaceful transfer of power in this country. Now, if that's your definition of insurrection, I think it definitely was an insurrection.
Yes.
Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Now, the Trump team had a different definition of insurrection. Their definition of insurrection was that it means the taking up of arms and waging war upon the United States. Now, if that's the definition of insurrection, I don't think it was an insurrection.
No.
But I don't think that's the definition of insurrection. I think the Supreme Court will decide what the definition of insurrection is.
Yes.
Do you, I'll just leave it to the Supreme Court. Do you have any thoughts on that area?
No
before we move
further
on?
thoughts.
No? Okay. Do you agree with what I've said so far?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Next step, engaging in or giving comfort to insurrection. Did Trump do that? The Attorney General, Henry Stanbury, who was in office at the time of the 14th Amendment was being debated, found that, quote, a person may engage in insurrection or rebellion without having actually levied war or taken arms if they commit, quote, any overt act for the purpose of promoting the rebellion.
Well, certainly the way that the 14th Amendment was used to disqualify people, I think that is in line with what happened there, where I don't think it was just Confederate soldiers who got disqualified on those grounds. It was Confederate politicians as well.
And the court said on January 6th, Trump, quote, gave a speech in which he literally exhorted his supporters to fight at the Capitol.
Yes.
And they said Trump, quote, did not merely incite the insurrection. Even when the siege on the Capitol was fully underway, he continued to support it by repeatedly demanding that Vice President Pence refuse to perform his constitutional duty and by calling senators to persuade them to stop the counting of electoral votes.
Yes.
These actions constitute overt, voluntary, and direct participation in the insurrection.
Yep.
Now, his defense replies by saying, nothing that President Trump did engaged in insurrection. Rather, his only explicit instructions called for protesting peacefully and patriotically, to support our Capitol Police and law enforcement, to stay peaceful and to remain peaceful. What are your thoughts on all that?
If you squinted hard enough at the last tweet that he wrote that day, where he's like, I tell all my beautiful supporters to go home to their beautiful homes or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe, but that would kind of ignore the 9 hours of other stuff before that.
Yeah, look, I got to say, I'm less convinced by the Colorado Supreme Court on this one and what they said there. In that, I think Trump did help them to a certain extent.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure. I'm not sure the evidence reaches the standard I would like to see. Like to disqualify someone, I want it to be a pretty high standard.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But
Trump did say he was going to go there with them.
He did say that, but then he didn't.
He didn't.
Yeah, that's right.
He didn't have. This is one thing. My view on this has changed.
Yeah.
Right. Because originally I thought, of course he didn't go, because that would involve walking further than he's ever walked in his life. But apparently he did try to go.
Yeah.
He actually did, to give him his credit, he did try to go in his car.
Yeah.
And there's claims that he tried to grab the steering wheel off the Secret Service, which I don't believe that. Yeah. That sounds like some Trump fan fiction to me. Yeah. But apparently he did. He actually did want to go.
There you go.
There you go. My initial view on that was wrong.
Having said all that, while I'm not thoroughly convinced by the Colorado Supreme Court on that score, let's remember giving comfort to insurrection.
Yes.
I think that's a lot clearer.
Yep.
I think
they thought that a lot of them actually did think he was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they thought that he was behind them.
But also just the fact he did nothing to fight them. And he didn't bother. The fact he didn't try to stop them is giving comfort to them.
Quite the opposite. Yes.
Yeah. And also he was goading them about Mike Pence as well.
Yes,
which we're about to get to as well.
Yes.
Which is the next matter is he protected by the First Amendment? And the test for this is the Brandenburg test from the 1960s, the Supreme Court case in the 1960s. Was his language, quote, directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action and is likely to incite or produce such action? If not, it's protected by the First Amendment. Now, I thought the Colorado Supreme Court did a particularly bad job in this area. They basically took the word of a sociologist, that Trump's instructions.
A sociologist?
Yes. They basically said, listen to sociologists. He says that Trump has a powerful effect on extremists. So that's good enough. If that's the line you're taking, then you're saying that Trump has less First Amendment rights than other people because he's popular and people will follow him.
Well, it certainly gives him far more ability to incite lawlessness.
It does. But I think that.
Yeah, I don't agree with you. I agree with the sociologist.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe you're just prompting me to defend my fellow academic here, but I think he's got a point.
Yeah.
Compared to any average person, Trump talking to one of his supporters, that language is going to have a very different effect on that person than, what the average person would have. And Trump is fully aware of this.
Okay. All right. That's fair enough. Okay. So you're happy it satisfies the First Amendment test?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yes.
I actually, I have a slightly complicated view on this.
By the way, who do you think they should have listened to? I can't listen to a sociologist.
No, I think you just need more than just to talk to one sociologist. I think you need to put some arguments together.
I think that more than one sociologist would have.
I'm about to put some arguments together for them.
Okay, good.
Which is to say that which is say that while I personally think it's a bit much to hang him with his speech, the speech where he used the word fight a lot.
Yes.
I'm not so down on that because I think that's just very standard language in politics. It's saying, oh, we're going to fight. DeSantis uses it every third word. And especially given, we can mock him, but he did use the phrase, he called for them to protest peacefully and patriotically. He did actually say that in part of that speech. But to me, the thing you just can't get past is him tweeting out in the middle of the insurrection.
Yes.
Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution. It's in the middle of a riot that he tweets that out.
Yeah.
No reasonable person would think that will have any effect other than to escalate the situation.
That's right.
There is no way that you can possibly think that anything would happen but escalation.
Completely agree.
So to me, that is obvious incitement. That tweet alone is incitement.
Yes.
Even if there's nothing else, that is incitement. So I actually think he clears the First Amendment test just because of that tweet.
There you go.
And I think the judges should say that. But anyway, we'll see if the Supreme Court does.
Okay.
So the next step is, is it self-executing the 14th Amendment?
Right.
That just on its own terms, you can disqualify someone?
Yes.
Or do you need legislation to enact it?
That's right. So this is the second big question. Okay, so everything we were just discussing was actually part of the first question.
Okay,
Which was it insurrection?
Yeah.
Second question is, essentially, can the court do it on its own?
Yeah.
Or does it actually require the legislature to do it, given it's Congress that actually has the power to impeach and remove and disqualify? So where do we land on that?
Okay, well, the court said that other provisions in the 14th Amendment have been held to be self-executing.
Yep.
And there is no textual evidence that the Congress intended Section 3 to be any different than the other sections.
No.
So if it's good for them, it's good for Section 3.
Okay.
That's the first step.
Yeah.
They noted that there was, and this is what the Trump side is talking about, there was one case in 1869, just after the 14th Amendment, called the Griffin case, where Justice Salmon Chase, held that legislation by Congress is necessary to give effect to the prohibition by providing for such removal. And he actually turned down a case, or not turned down, dismissed a case. On the basis of there not being legislation. So Trump's people are going to point to that one.
Yep.
But
you'll be hearing a lot about Salmon Chase.
You will. But the Griffin case, they call it.
Yep.
But the ruling actually isn't a precedent because of the court that it was handed down in.
What court was it handed down in?
He was riding circuit at the time.
Salmon court.
He was he was swimming upstream as he delivered this. It was in a river.
Okay.
So it's actually not technically a precedent, and Colorado rejected it. Now, the Supreme Court might have another view.
They might.
I'll be interested to see what they have to say about that. I don't actually have an opinion because this is very technical.
It's very technical.
Then there's the one which we've talked about at length, which is the Office of the United States.
Yes.
One, which is now Colorado Supreme Court didn't buy that argument at all. They said it seems most likely that the presidency is not specifically included because it is so evidently an office.
That has always been my opinion about this.
They also,
I'm glad someone said it.
Yeah, no, the Colorado Supreme Court is on your side.
Yeah.
They note the Constitution refers to the presidency as an office 25 times. And it refers to an office.
But he takes a different oath of office, Chaz.
Yes.
It's a different oath.
Yeah, and also they note.
Even though it's called an oath of office, it's clearly not an office because it's a different oath.
And also they say it refers to an office under the United States in several contexts that clearly support the conclusion that the presidency is such an office. But here's where I come in. This is not Trump talking now. This is me talking. The magic phrase is not an office.
Yeah.
Or an office under the United States.
Yep.
The magic phrase is it's an officer of the United States. That's the term. Section 3 says you cannot hold any office, civil or military, under the United States. That's your office under the United States. If you're disqualified. That's not the test. The test is not office under the United States. That's the punishment.
Yeah.
The test is, the disqualifying act is if you're an insurrectionist while you are, quote, an officer of the United States. Now, I know this is highly technical.
Yes.
I understand that. But that's the magic phrase. And I'm surprised they were so loose in their arguments that they didn't even notice they were talking about a different phrase in
Do you
their
think
arguments.
they didn't notice?
Well,
Jazz?
I think you'd get that right. Because it's important. Like, let's put it this way.
There were 4 people disagreed with this decision. Didn't
Yeah.
any of them point it out?
I didn't read
Yeah.
I didn't read them. Maybe they did. I don't know. I didn't read them. There's 3 who disagreed, and I didn't read them.
I thought it was a 5-4 decision.
I thought it was 4-3.
Okay.
Yeah, I might be wrong.
Yeah, no, you're right.
it's,
Yeah.
Anyway, now the lower court noted that an early version of Section 3 did have the president listed and took it out. They said that suggested it was meant to not be covered. The Supreme Court made the point I just told you they made, which is they took it out because it's so obvious and it didn't need to be there. The court pointed to an argument at the time of the 14th Amendment in the Senate where someone objected it didn't go far enough because insurrectionists may be elected president or vice president of the United States. And another senator replied, let me call the senator's attention to the words or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States. There's an argument they had at the time.
Yeah.
Once again, note, that's the wrong part of the section. That's the under the United States part, not the of the United States part. And I remind you that Article 2, Section 3 declares the president, quote, shall commission all the officers of the United States.
There you go.
Which is, now I totally get that this is very technical. This is how many angels can you fit on the head of a pin kind of stuff. I'm not saying the law should work like this.
Yes, yeah.
I'm just saying that this is exactly the kind of very thin legal read that a drowning Supreme Court justice is going to grab at.
Totally.
And I still think this is the kind of thing Justice Roberts loves to do.
Yes, yeah.
And so let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So from the political side of this, what I think is worth pointing out is, as we've said, this was a 4-3 decision of the Colorado Supreme Court.
Who are all Democrats.
All 7 judges were appointed by Democrats.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court is 6-3 appointed by Republicans. I would be very, very surprised if the Supreme Court held this up.
Yes.
Yeah, like
very,
it would
very
be.
surprised.
Yeah, that would be quite a shock.
My question is going to be, does Eleanor Kagan vote for it or not? Like, I think there's no doubt that all 6 conservative judges are not going to go for this.
Yeah.
It's just a question of, is it going to be 6-3 or 7-2 or 8-1 or 9-0? My guess is, I'm guessing 7-2 with Eleanor Kagan going on the conservative side. But we'll see.
Yeah, I'm not going to make any predictions other than
Anyway, I think we've probably covered that enough.
Yes.
But we'll find out in a couple of weeks. Well, at least the arguments will be in a couple of weeks. We'll have some kind of idea. Okay. The next trial is the one involving Trump's immunity to potential prosecution for the January 6th case.
Yes.
Okay, so Trump's trying to have the federal January 6th case dismissed because he says, as president, he's immune from being prosecuted for simply doing his job as president. He's not saying he can't be charged for anything as president. If he committed an illegal private act, like, say, him personally shooting someone on Fifth Avenue, he would be liable for prosecution. He's arguing that if he's conducting official acts as part of his duties as president, he shouldn't be later prosecuted for this. This is how Trump himself makes the argument.
Of course, I was entitled as President of the United States and Commander-in-Chief to immunity. I'm entitled to immunity. Every president has immunity, especially one that did the job I did. I did a great job. And I wasn't working for myself. I was working for the country. I wasn't campaigning. The election was long over. Wasn't campaigning. I was looking for voter fraud, something that I have to do under my mandate. I have to look for voter fraud. And I was finding it. Tremendous amounts of voter fraud in the 2020 election. We have volumes of information. It's all there. And I was doing my job, which I had to do. And it's my obligation to do.
I like the novel legal argument that all presidents have immunity, especially if they're doing a great job.
For those who couldn't hear, because I was playing the clip over the top, Dave was having a good chortle during that. It was unconvincing, I have to say. Actually, to be honest, their argument in court was slightly different. It wasn't that that you can't be prosecuted for official acts. They said you can be prosecuted for official acts as long as you're impeached first. That was their argument. If you're not impeached while in office for an official act, then you can't be prosecuted afterwards, is their argument.
Right.
Right. Now, firstly, I don't think, I've said this before on the podcast, I don't think Trump's actions leading up to January 6th were official acts.
No, they
It's
weren't.
not part of his job to patrol state votes in a presidential election.
That's right.
Also, Trump didn't think it was his official duty at the time either, because back in the middle of December, when he was filing Supreme Court applications, he declared they were, quote, on his filing,
Yes.
in his personal capacity as candidate for re-election.
Yes.
So even he acknowledged it wasn't his official capacity.
Right. And the other thing is, he was campaigning.
Yes.
He was lobbying members of Congress and his vice president to change the outcome of the election.
That's true.
He absolutely,
by definition,
he absolutely was campaigning.
he was even
at that point
during the insurrection. He was on the phone,
Yes.
calling senators, lobbying them.
Yes, yeah,
like
yeah.
you say, that's correct.
Yes, but anyway, one day we're going to see these volumes of information that they have.
That they might be soon. But Jack Smith hasn't,
Yes.
to be honest, hasn't even bothered to argue against this. He's arguing even if you count these as official acts,
Yes.
Trump still isn't immune from prosecution. That's what he's arguing. And I should say one more thing before we dive into a big clip. I don't think Trump's people really care about the outcome of this question
No.
at all.
No.
I think everyone expects him to lose eventually.
Yes, yeah.
But the trial is not going to start until this question is decided.
Yes.
And they're probably hoping the appeals process will chew up 3 or 4 months.
Yes.
And the trial's currently meant to be in March. If they can
Yes.
push it back to, say, August, the closer it gets to September, the more chance they have of putting it off
Yes, yeah.
until after the election, which is all he wants to do.
Yes, yeah.
Anyway, but some interesting questions were raised. This is the DC Court of Appeals. Hearing the question, there were 3 judges. Judge Karen Henderson, H.W. Bush appointee. Michelle Childs was a Biden appointee. And Florence Pan was a Biden appointee. And they posed a series of hypotheticals to flesh out these arguments. This is a hypothetical posed by Florence Pan.
Could a president order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? That's an official act in order to SEAL Team 6?
He would have to be and would speedily be, impeached and convicted before the criminal
But if you
prosecution.
weren't, what if you weren't? There would be no criminal prosecution, no criminal liability for that?
Chief Justice's opinion in Marbury against Madison and our constitutional tradition and the plain language of the impeachment judgment clause all clearly presuppose that what the founders were concerned about was not.
I asked you a yes or no question. Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival who was not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution?
If he were impeached and convicted first. And
So your answer is no.
My answer is qualified yes. There's a political process that would have to occur under the structure of our Constitution, which would require impeachment and conviction by the Senate.
Interesting hypothetical there, Dave. Now, that's the first time you've heard that.
That is the first time I've heard that.
What's your reaction before I go on?
Well, apart from the fact that that lawyer sounds suspiciously like Robert Kennedy Jr.,
Yes.
which didn't do very much for his credibility.
Yes.
I agree with the judge.
Yeah, well, I think most people would agree with the judge.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, we have seen that that most of the Senate don't believe you can be impeached when you're not in actual power.
Yes.
Right? Like that's what happened in Trump's second impeachment.
Yes, yeah.
So presumably that means if the lawyer was right,
Yeah.
that a president could do anything they like,
Yes.
resign immediately so they can't be impeached.
Yeah.
And then they can't be prosecuted.
Good point.
That's that is the argument
That's
he
a
seems to be
logical
making.
conclusion. Yes, yeah.
But to be fair to that lawyer, this was not his hypothetical. This is the hypothetical the judge was backing him into a corner.
Yeah.
Like he was just trying to make the best of the horrible situation he was in.
Yeah.
Right. To be fair, it's not like Trump,
yeah.
Trump or Trump's people are saying we demand the right to assassinate our rivals.
Yes, yeah.
This was the judge's hypothetical,
Yeah.
but they didn't deal with it very well. It's obviously ridiculous. It will obviously not fly. Not to mention it flies in the face of the arguments that Trump's team made during the second impeachment, which, if you recall, was this.
Article 1, Section 3 says judgments in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office and disqualification to hold any office of honor, trust, profit under the United States, but the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law. So this idea of a January amnesty is nonsense. If my colleagues on this side of the chamber actually think that President Trump committed a criminal offense, and let's understand, a high crime is a felony and a misdemeanor is a misdemeanor. The words haven't changed that much over the time. After he's out of office, you go and arrest him. So there is no opportunity where the President of the United States can run rampant in January at the end of his term and just go away scot-free. The Department of Justice does know what to do with such people.
So there you go. That's what that article says.
So they're arguing the direct opposite during impeachment.
Yep.
Okay. So I love that. Like I said, it's not going to fly, but they're not going to go for that, obviously.
Yeah.
But this is just about delaying as much as anything.
Totally, yes.
There was a more sensible argument that didn't get publicised as much.
Of course it didn't, because it's a more sensible argument.
Yes. And Jack Smith's team annoyed me a bit with this argument.
Oh.
I'll just detail it quickly. Judge Henderson was asking about a possible, what she called Pandora's box, that could be opened if they denied immunity, where actual government acts, real government acts now, not this bullshit like the Trump trying to find voter fraud acts, end up being prosecuted. An example that they were debating was Obama's drone strikes, taking out a suspected terrorist who was a US citizen. Is that murder? And she was worried about opening the floodgates and cycles of recrimination where each side start investigating each other for potential crimes. Now, Jack Smith's lawyer said he would be immune from any such prosecution because it didn't have an improper purpose. He said the difference is Trump had an improper purpose, whereas Barack Obama with his drone strikes didn't have an improper purpose. That really annoyed me because, number one, they could spend 3 months easily fleshing that one out.
Yes, yeah.
What's an improper purpose? What's not an improper purpose? And if Trump's lawyers are smart, they'll hone in on that one as hard as they possibly can.
Massive if.
Yeah. That's true. That's fair.
Yeah.
B, why should he be immune? If he has reason to order the hit, then he won't be charged. And if he has no reason to order the hit, then he committed a war crime.
Yes.
And he should be charged because the drone operator could be charged if it's a war crime, if he's following a bad order.
Yes, yeah.
Then why can't the guy making the order be charged?
Yeah.
He shouldn't be immune. It's really simple. If you're the president, don't break any fucking laws.
Yes.
It's real simple.
That's right.
Yeah, and the fact that these government lawyers are trying to retain wriggle room for governments to get away with shit.
Bad look.
Really pissed me off.
Yeah.
And especially given it could actually work against what they're trying to do as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, that annoyed me a bit. But we'll see what happens. We're expecting for them to respond, the judges to respond on this one anytime. In fact, they might have already done so. So it's like today or tomorrow or something like that.
Yep.
Then what happens is we're expecting Trump to appeal to the full DC Court of Appeals, assuming it's going to get rejected, which will get rejected.
Yep.
And that is unlikely to happen apparently, but if one of the judges wants to help Trump out, they'll try to grant them that hearing to waste time.
Yep.
Then the Supreme Court afterwards as well. And unless the appeals court, Supreme Court can find a way to speed this up, which they might, Trump might get his delay. We'll see. I don't really know how this works. Okay. Any comments on that before we go to Georgia? I'm trying to rush through stuff here.
No.
Okay, Georgia. Do you know the Georgia story? Because it's a pretty
I'm
big
vaguely
deal.
aware of the Georgia
okay.
story. Yes.
I might just leave this at Georgia and then you can do as much football as you like until the battery runs out.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. In the Georgia January 6th racketeering case against Trump,
Yes.
the most obscure defendant of the 19 was a guy called Mike Roman. Mike Roman was, I can see you looking vague, and so was I.
Yeah.
Mike Roman was a campaign operative for Trump who was involved in the fake electors scheme. He I must say, he eluded me as well.
Yep.
Turns out he's quite important because unlike Trump, he got himself a real lawyer.
Oh, no.
Yes, he didn't get himself a Trump lawyer. He got himself a lady called Ashley Merchant, who is well known as being a real lawyer.
Wow.
And Ashley Merchant dug up a serious potential issue here. And that is, she submitted a filing last week that alleged that Fani Willis had an extramarital affair with a man called Nathan Wade, who Willis then made a special prosecutor in the case, bypassing the normal procedures for such hires. And Merchant then alleges that Wade is unqualified because he's never prosecuted a felony case before. She also alleges he didn't take his oath as required, which might poison the work that he has done to date. He's been out for 2 years as well. And then then Willis paid his firm an exorbitant amount of money as well, about $654,000 since he was hired in January 2022. And she used some of that money to go on romantic getaways together in Florida and on a Caribbean cruise. In the filing, Merchant offered no concrete proof of any of these allegations. She just cited sources close to both people. So understandably, people were a little bit suspicious about this. But, and I should say, Merchant alleges that Willis has committed honest services fraud, which is a federal crime in which a vendor gives kickbacks to an employer. Ironically, she may also be guilty of racketeering as well. Merchant also says that the failure to make proper disclosures should disqualify them both from further involvement in the RICO case, and potentially the case against Roman should be dismissed as defectively filed and corruptly maintained. All right, so she didn't prove anything. She just made a bunch of assertions.
Yeah.
Since then,
yes,
it's been revealed that Fani Willis was subpoenaed to testify in Wade's divorce case
right
before the accusation was made public. Which suggests that there might be something going on there. Then Fani Willis got up and defended herself, in all places in a church service. And this is what she had to say.
Lord, your flawed, hard-headed, and imperfect child, I'm a little confused. I appointed 3 special counsel, as is my right to do, paid them all the same hourly rate. They only attacked one. I hired one white woman, a good personal friend and great lawyer. A superstar, I tell you. I hired one white man, brilliant, my friend, and a great lawyer. And I hired one black man, another superstar, a great friend, and a great lawyer. Oh Lord, they gonna be mad when I call them out on this nonsense. First thing they say, oh, she gonna play the race card now. But no, God, isn't it them who's playing the race card when they only question one? Isn't it them playing the race card when they constantly think, I need someone from some other jurisdiction in some other state to tell me how to do a job I've been doing almost 30 years. Wasn't it them that attacked this lawyer of impeccable credentials? The black man I chose has been a judge more than 10 years, run a private practice more than 20, represented businesses in civil litigation. I ain't done, y'all. Served as a prosecutor, a criminal defense lawyer, special assistant attorney general, won Chief Justice Robert Benham Award from the State Bar of Georgia. You know, they ain't just giving this to black men. How come, God, the same black man I hired was acceptable when a Republican in another county hired him and paid him twice the rate? Come on. Oh, y'all ain't hear me. Come on. In another county, the elected official has the authority to pay him twice the rate. Why is the white male Republican's judgment good enough, but the black female Democrats not?
Convinced, Dave?
This all sounds very weird when it's being addressed to God.
Yeah.
Look, I'm sure God already knows that you hired 3 special counselors. God is omniscient.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit surreal.
Yeah, it was a bit surreal.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I was convinced by it, though.
No.
No, and there's more information to come. The fact that she didn't even mention the affair, I think, is as good as an admission, by the way.
I don't think it's as good as an admission, but
pretty
I
fucking
kind of
close.
would have expected to see a denial
Yeah.
of it. Yep.
Okay, so what's
But
come out?
the
since then?
legally substantial point, though, is that's on the did she pay him exorbitant amounts? Did she personally profit from it?
Yeah, well,
Which she has kind of addressed.
well, the affair is part of the profiting.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
It's the holidays.
Yes,
It's part of the
holidays.
issue, right?
Wow.
Anyway, we'll get to that.
Imagine if she's thrown this whole case away for the sake of a dirty weekend in Florida.
I mean, but yeah, Caribbean cruise, Dave. They're pretty cool. Okay, it's also come out that
Yes.
Wade filed for divorce the day after he was hired by Fani Willis.
Right.
Now let's get a bit more info. Firstly, the Wade's qualifications. Was he qualified or not? He indeed appears to have never prosecuted a felony. He was an assistant solicitor, like she said, for Cobb County in 1999. The office handles misdemeanor cases, not felonies. Like she said, he's also been a municipal judge for years and years and years.
Yes.
Mostly dealt with traffic tickets.
Right.
He also, like she said, ran a private practice that focuses on family law and contract disputes, not RICO.
Sounds like he's got some personal experience with family law.
Yes. He has no history, in fact, in RICO whatsoever. He's been paid $250 an hour. Let's now look at the other two specialists that Willis hired and how much she paid them. She said she paid them at the same rate.
She did.
John Floyd is Georgia's leading expert on state RICO prosecutions, and he helped draft the actual RICO law. He's been consulting with Willis's office on other RICO cases for 3 years. He's been paid. Remember, Wade was paid $650,000 over 2 years at $250 an hour. He's been paid $73,000 at $150 an hour, at least from the contract that the Daily Caller dug up. And
Hang on, so she lied to God.
But it's just like you said, God knows. It's all right. It's not really a lie. It's a white lie. God knows what's going on. She's just play acting with God. Anna Cross, who is a former DeKalb County Assistant District Attorney,
Yes.
and has handled dozens of felony appeals and argued important high-profile motions for Fulton County before, she's been paid $43,000 at $250 an hour, same rate.
Right.
Okay, so what's happened is, maybe it's possible that John Floyd was paid at two rates. He's paid one contract $150 and one at $250.
Yeah.
I don't know. But she definitely has paid the other two way less than she's paid Wade, right? She's given him much more work.
Yep.
The case is, so what's going to happen? The case is very unlikely to be dismissed. If there's a conflict of interest found, then it would disqualify Willis and Wade and the entire Fulton County DA's office from the case. So what's the standard for a conflict of interest? Andrew Fleischman, who is a Georgia defense attorney, has written this. The standard to disqualify Fulton County here is not whether Fani Willis actually made her decisions to benefit Nathan Wade. It's plausible she would have made the exact same choices without the personal relationship. But if her choices to extend or prolong the investigation benefit a romantic partner who is paying for her meals and vacations, that is an actual conflict.
Right.
Even if it wasn't the reason
Okay.
why.
Yeah.
So it matters if they're having an affair. It matters if they went on those holidays. It matters if they went on the Caribbean cruise. We don't know yet.
I know we don't.
We don't know yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So suppose so if there is conflict of interest and she's disqualified, what then happens to the case?
I'm glad you asked. Well, the next thing I've written here is what happens next?
Yes.
Andrew Fleischman wrote this as well. So, what happens next? Judge McAfee has stated his intention to hold a hearing in February to look over the truth of these allegations. If they are true, the case will not be dismissed, but it is likely that he will disqualify Fani Willis, which under Georgia law will require disqualifying her entire office. We've already said this. The case will then go to the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia, which will decide who the case can go on to next. In the best case scenario, the case will find its way to someone like Sherry Boston in DeKalb County. She's a long-time district attorney who's not prone to seeking the limelight. She's in a blue part of the state. and her office has the budget, the bandwidth, and the experience to tackle this case, possibly by simplifying some of its RICO elements. The Prosecuting Attorneys Council also has competent attorneys who can bring the case on their own. But even if everything goes as smoothly as humanly possible, it's difficult to imagine trying the former president before the November election, and it's also possible the case may go to someone who will choose to dismiss it.
I mean, certainly on that first point, this case was going to take like 4 years anyway, possibly 10.
I've always maintained that.
You know, if we go by previous racketeering cases. So it wasn't like this one was going to...
No.
I mean, even though it is the one that could have the most serious consequences for Trump down the track, it's also the one that is most likely to go on until after he's dead.
Yes, that is true. That's true. But it could be dismissed if they get unlucky.
Yeah.
By the way, Fleischman added this as well in a tweet. The most frustrating thing is that any competent Georgia prosecutor could have tried Trump for false statements in May of 2021 and secured a felony conviction. He lied a bunch to state officials about stuff within their duties, and he was a party to the false elector certificates.
Yep.
His only potential defenses would be truth or materiality, and they're both losers. And Fleischman's quite annoyed about that, and I agree with him.
Yeah, that's a good point.
One more little aside on this whole thing, which is not related to everything we've talked about, but just a little aside. When the Conservatives have been scouring through Wade's billing practices, they found that he met with the White House counsel twice in 2022 and billed them for 8 hours each. That doesn't mean 8-hour meetings. That includes transport.
Yes.
So, driving or flying to Washington or whatever. But still interesting because the White House is supposed to have absolutely nothing to do with any of these cases. And so we'll just note that. Do you have anything to say about any of that?
Nope.
No? Okay. Like I said, we're still got the Engeron trial. We've got the E. Jean Carroll. Let's not worry about them for now.
Okay.
Let's worry about football.
That's right.
Dave's world of football.
Okay, so the last week or two has been the most significant football week in the history of the state of Michigan.
It's the Michigan Corner. Dave.
Okay, yes. So first of all, University of Michigan won the national championship for the first time since 1997. I missed the game because I was in Zanzibar at the time, which doesn't have the greatest coverage of American football, but I was following it online at 4 a.m. Certainly a fantastic event for Michigan supporters, beating University of Washington. I was actually very worried about that game because University of Washington has a very thrilling and high-powered offense. However, it didn't quite get off the ground against Michigan's defense, which was very, very good, which has been the real strength of Michigan all year. Michigan had beaten University of Alabama in their semi-final, which was very significant because, as I said beforehand, usually what happens with these teams from outside the South who do very well all year is then when they suddenly play a team from the South, they get absolutely annihilated, and it turns out it's really men playing boys, but it did not happen this time. Now, a little side note on that is after that, Nick Saban, the coach of the University of Alabama, who has a claim to being the most successful college football coach in the history of the United States. He's won six championships with Alabama. The only other coach who might be more successful is another University of Alabama coach from decades ago, Bear Bryant, who I think also won 6. But Nick Saban retired at the age of 70, which people have gone on a lot longer than 70. And like a lot of people hate Nick Saban, but a lot of people hate every college football coach. I'll give some kudos to Nick Saban in that he actually went out on a pretty high note. Like his team came fourth. And he didn't decide to stick around for one more. He just decided, fuck it, I'm out. I'm 70 years old. I'm one of the most successful coaches of all time. I'm out of here. So anyway, so that's the end of an era. As we've discussed, this has been a controversial season for Michigan. Jim Harbaugh missed 6 games due to suspension, 3 suspensions for recruiting violations, 3 for the sign-stealing scandal perpetrated by Connor Stallions, which is still being investigated by the NCAA, although I don't think that investigation is going to come to much. It is not clear that Jim Harbaugh is going to stay on as Michigan's coach, because now that he's won this national championship, there are a lot of NFL teams who want his services. They want him back in the NFL. He got to the Super Bowl in 2013 with the San Francisco 49ers. And I've got to say, I despised him back then because he was such a petulant child on the sidelines. And I'm aware of the fact that he still is. He just happens to be my team's petulant child now. But anyway, he lost that Super Bowl to his brother John Harbaugh, who coaches the Baltimore Ravens, who could well be a Super Bowl contender this year. So that's the mountain that he has still got left to climb, is winning the Super Bowl. And a lot of people seem to think that he could be lured away from the University of Michigan. He's very, very non-committal about his future. Certainly, University of Michigan's quarterback, JJ McCarthy, there was this big campaign among Michigan fans and alumni to get him to stay, because you can actually offer people financial inducements now under the name, image and likeness laws. And JJ McCarthy gave this very emotional speech shortly after the game saying it would be so hard for me to leave the University of Michigan. Then he declared for the NFL draft a few days later. He's not actually going to go that high in the NFL draft, because he's probably about the 5th best quarterback in the draft. Michigan's championship was, he was a very good quarterback, but it wasn't based on his quarterbacking. The running game was very important in the offense. And as I said, it was their defense that was the most important thing.
What reason did he give for going in the draft? It's one thing if you get traded against your will. It's nothing when you go, I would like to go to anyone else.
No. But this is the thing. His choice was between staying in college for another year, where the most money he would be able to make is whatever they can give him in advertising sponsorship.
Oh, I see.
Or going and making a proper professional salary. There are very good reasons, if you think that you're going to make an NFL team, not to stick around in college.
Yeah, sure.
You can get injured, or you can have a crap season. This has happened to a lot of quarterbacks who have stayed on 1 year too long.
Yeah.
Matt Leinart of University of Southern California is the best example of this. Their draft stock plummets. JJ McCarthy's draft stock is probably as high as it's going to get at this point. So he's made the right decision from his point of view. I don't think Michigan's going to go back to back. And I think in general, we're looking at a whole new world of college football next year, where the conferences, which have already been chopping and changing for a long time, are going to be completely transformed next year. Basically, whereas there used to be 5 or 6 major conferences, which were all regionally based and had all of these traditional rivalries, like the Big Ten conference that Michigan is in, which used to be the Midwestern Conference. University of Washington is joining that conference next year, along with the University of Southern California. So it's, the traditional conference rivalries are dead. The Michigan-Ohio State game is not going to matter anywhere near as much as it has mattered for the last 100 years or so, where it was the last game of the season, the chance that each college had to ruin the other college's season. It's not going to happen because both of them can make the playoffs now, because there's an expanded 12-team playoff field. So this was a nice sort of farewell to a former era for Michigan to win this. Another thing worth mentioning is last time Michigan won in 1997, that championship was shared with the University of Nebraska, because that was back before there was a playoff. It was all based on voting. And there were 2 separate polls, one of which had Michigan at the top, the other had Nebraska at the top. So this is Michigan's first uncontested national championship since 1948. And if Michigan fans are being honest with ourselves, we haven't really been that relevant since the 1940s, at least in national terms. But we are at least for a few months now. But that's not the only thing that happened. The other thing that happened was the professional team, the Detroit Lions, won a playoff for the first time since 1991. When back in 1991, they had one of the greatest running backs in the history of the game, Barry Sanders. They have not won a playoff game since then. That was the longest playoff drought in the NFL, because the Cincinnati Bengals broke theirs a few years ago. Cincinnati, I think think, hadn't won one since 1989. I remember seeing an interview of the last time that Cincinnati had won, and it was being conducted by O.J. Simpson. That's how long ago it was. But Detroit had an even longer drought than that, which they have just broken, and they broke it at playing at home, and they're going to get another playoff game at home as well against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have been one of the surprise packages of this week. So it is without a doubt the single greatest month in the history of football in the state of Michigan. Detroit has not won since 1956. And back then there was no, I think it was 1956, maybe earlier than that. Back then there was no Super Bowl. It was just, a national football championship. So
just a bowl.
Yeah, yeah. So a tremendous week for Michigan football in every sense.
Awesome.
Yes.
You did that a lot quicker than I thought you were going to do. Like, you just keep talking while I go around and have a look at the battery.
Okay. So while Chaz is having a look at the battery, let me talk about Bill Belichick. So Bill Belichick is definitely an example of a coach who hung on for far too long. Now, Bill Belichick has a claim to being the most successful coach in the history of the NFL, at least in the NFL's modern era. He won 6 Super Bowls, but because of the fact that he didn't go at the same time that Tom Brady did, we all got a chance to see how well does Bill Belichick do as a head coach after his quarterback Tom Brady has gone.
And how well did he do?
About as well as he did before Tom Brady was his coach, which is not very well at all. Well, I mean, yeah, pretty mediocre. 3 losing seasons in a row now.
Well, talking about hanging on too long.
Yes.
I'm going to go for this battery. We've got 18 minutes.
We've got 18 minutes
left.
Okay,
so here's your choice.
Yes.
Your choice is I can finish off the section on the courts.
Yep.
Or we can go to Yemen.
I want to know more about Yemen before I get into Yemen, so you finish off the
let's
courts.
finish off the courts.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So we are awaiting the results of the Engoron trial right now. Judge Engoron, that's the New York tax and property fraud case, if you recall that one.
Uh-huh.
The most noteworthy thing about this that you missed is that Trump insisted on presenting his own final presentation.
Oh, Jesus.
Even though the judge had specifically tried to limit what he could say to relevant facts of the case. He'd been tick-tacking back and forth with with Trump's lawyer about what he was allowed to say and what he wasn't allowed to say, and the lawyer kept on not agreeing to it.
Yep.
And the judge kept on saying, will you agree? And then he wouldn't reply. And the judge would say, I'm going to give you 2 hours to agree. And he wouldn't agree. He said, okay, so then he's not talking.
Yeah.
But then on the day, Trump's lawyer asked for permission to have Trump speak. So Engoron repeats, do you promise to just comment on the facts and the law? And Trump just starts talking immediately without agreeing. And so he gets up there and he just stream of consciousness, Judge Trump having a go at the judge, having a go at Letitia James, all what you'd expect. And he only stopped after the judge asked, are you done? Not exactly Perry Mason. Right? Especially given there's no jury.
Yeah.
He's only pissing off the judge who's going to be determining the result, right? Okay, so just remember that for a second. We then move to E. Jean Carroll. We'll find out what in the next day. Probably, once again, this might have already come down at the time we're having this conversation.
Let me just check.
But we'll find out the result very soon on this. Meanwhile, the E. Jean Carroll case has just, the second E. Jean Carroll case has just begun the last few days. And he's at it again. He wants to attend every single day of this trial, and he wants to testify. Judge Kaplan has ruled. Oh, by the way, Judge Kaplan has gone to some extreme levels already to try and control this court with Trump. He's actually made all the jurors not use names when talking to each other. They're talking to each other with numbers.
Wow.
Because they're so scared of being doxxed as a result of this trial. Anyway, he's all, once again, a similar situation to the Engoron case. He's already been found guilty for defamation. Yes. This is about sentencing another defamation, right? And Kaplan's ruled that because of that, because he's been found guilty, Trump is precluded from offering any testimony, evidence, or argument suggesting or implying that he did not sexually assault Miss Carroll, that she fabricated her account of the assault, or that she had any motive to do so, which is pretty reasonable.
Yes.
Given he's already been found guilty.
Yeah.
And this is a jury trial now.
Yes,
So he's messing with the jury when he starts doing that kind of stuff.
Yep.
The defense says Trump can testify about his state of mind, the timing of the statements, his mitigation or correction of any statements without violating the court's order, as well as testifying about the circumstances of his comments as they related to comments in Miss Carroll's continuous parade of interviews and publicity. That's true, he can do that. He can testify about all of that without violating the order, but we know he won't. Of course, he'll say whatever he wants.
Yes.
And this time, as I said, it's a jury trial, so it might matter. He's already shown a huge amount of contempt. On the very first day, the first morning of the trial, while he was sitting there on day one, someone posted 30 times to his Truth Social account attacking E. Jean Carroll and the judge while he was just sitting there, right? And although Carroll's lawyer did explicitly point that out to the jury, so it might not work in his favour.
Yeah.
She said, quote, he sat in his courthouse this morning and while he was sitting there, he posted more defamatory statements, more lies about Miss Carroll and this case. By our last count, 22 posts so far. Think about that. Think about that when you consider how much money will it take to get him to stop.
So he was sitting there. He didn't have the phone in his hand.
No.
So either someone's posting on his behalf or he's posting telepathically.
I hadn't thought of that option.
Has he actually crossed that boundary?
He's so in simpatico with his phone.
Yeah. I think it's possible.
It is.
We
can't rule it out.
Yeah.
We can't rule it. God made Trump. Remember that. we played that video on America.
Jesus. Yeah.
I'll read you one excerpt from the New Republic about what happened that same day.
Okay.
Trump also muttered to Haber, that's his lawyer,
Yeah.
that the trial is a witch hunt and really is a con job. When Carroll's lawyers played the video from 2023 of Trump calling his first trial against Carroll a witch hunt and a disgrace, Trump told Haber, it's true. Kaplan finally had enough. Mr. Trump has the right to be present here. That right can be forfeited if he's disruptive, which has been reported to me, and if he disregards court orders. Kaplan said just before the trial broke for lunch, Mr. Trump, I hope I don't have to exclude you from the trial. I understand you're probably very, very eager for me to do that. Control yourself, he said. Trump replied, I'd love it. Kaplan replied, I know you would. You just can't control yourself in this circumstance, apparently. And Trump replied, neither can you. So.
Wow, that's an Elon Musk level burn.
So what is all this?
Tell it to Earth.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So what is all this bullshit about? I want to read you a quote from Haberman and Jonathan Swan in the New York Times. And whatever you think of Haberman, she knows Donald Trump. She knows him real well. Yeah. Okay. This is a quote from their article. Advisors say Trump believes the court appearances dramatize what is fast becoming a central theme of his campaign, that President Biden is the true threat to American democracy. Mr. Trump's claim is the most outlandish and baseless version of a tactic he's used throughout his life in business and politics. Whenever he's accused of something, no matter what that something is, he responds by accusing his opponent of that exact thing.
Neither can you.
Yes.
Yeah.
The idea is less to argue that Mr. Trump is clean than to suggest that everyone else is dirty. Mr. Trump is repurposing his favoured tool to neutralise what many see as his worst offence in public life and greatest political vulnerability in the 2024 campaign. His efforts, after he lost the 2020 election, to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power and remain in office. His campaign apparatus has kicked into gear along with him as he baselessly claims Mr. Biden is stage managing investigations and legal action against him. Mr. Trump's advisors have coined the slogan, Biden against democracy, the acronym BAD. If you can fight Biden almost to a draw on this, which I think you can, it's over, Steve Bannon said in an interview, referring to the imperiling of American democracy. He's got nothing else he can pitch. This is his main thing. Now, I think that's good analysis. I think that's exactly what Trump's trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's working. PRI in August 2023 had a poll out. 57% of Americans said Trump's re-election would pose a threat to democracy. 53% said the same of Biden. Amongst independent voters, nearly identical shares thought each candidate would be a threat to democracy. So this is the way he can campaign all year. If he doesn't get convicted, it might work out for him.
But I don't. Do you think, though, him keeping the focus on this particular element is the wisest way for him to campaign?
Well, he's got no choice.
Wouldn't the focus be on Biden's unpopularity?
But his court cases are going to be the story of the year, no matter what happens.
Yeah.
But he knows that all Biden is going to do is talk about him being a threat to democracy and him being a criminal. He knows that's what's going to happen. If he the whole time can be going, so are you, so are you, so are you, so are you. These trials are proof of your criminality. These trials are proof of your flouting democracy. He can undermine that. He can bring Biden down to the same level or even worse. You're saying, shouldn't he talk about Biden being unpopular? He doesn't need to. Biden's unpopular. When someone's unpopular, you don't need to talk about it. Everyone knows they're unpopular. They don't like them.
No, I disagree.
You disagree?
No.
Okay.
No, the focus should be on the things that are actually making. But no, not that I want to offer Trump campaign advice.
Here's a pepper. So,
but I would have thought if you're a Republican campaign operative, you want the whole focus to be on Biden as president. But, with occasionally pulling approval ratings of 32%.
Yes.
Or
we'll get to that another time.
Or rather than Trump as criminal defendant. And if you look at the Trump's heights in the polls in contests against Biden have come at times when the focus hasn't been on these trials.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. So the October to December period, where the focus was all on things that Biden was doing, and the kind of general state of the country, but that's when Trump reaches his peaks. When the focus goes back to, and you could say, okay, these trials are going to be the story all year anyway. There'll certainly be a story. If I were Republicans, if I were Trump's team, I would be trying to put the focus on what Americans perceive as a lot of disasters happening in Biden's presidency. So, no, I don't agree with that.
So, are you saying that you don't think it's his tactic, or are you saying you don't think it's a smart tactic?
I don't agree with Steve Bannon's analysis.
Yeah, okay.
I agree with Ackman and Swan that that's what Trump is trying to do. But I think that this is related to Trump's hubris about thinking that this can somehow be a winning issue for him.
Gotcha.
I don't think this can actually be a winning issue for him. It can be a lot closer than Biden would like, but I don't think that Trump as criminal defendant is ever actually going to be a winning issue for Trump, as opposed to how people see the Biden presidency, which is definitely a winning issue for Trump.
Okay, well, that's a good note to go out on, but they still have 5 minutes. I'm going to use it for. I've got one more little topic.
All right, yep.
I wasn't going to talk about this, so I have no notes on this, but it's not going to take me long to talk about it, and you won't know about this.
Okay.
The Peppers probably won't know about this either, but it's awesome.
Right, what's that?
I've been trying to get it in the last 2 weeks of Play America. Roger Stone, have you heard what he's up to?
No.
Okay. So this is off the top of my head. So do you remember when Roger Stone was charged through the Mueller report?
Yep.
After the Mueller report, he was charged with obstruction.
Yes.
He was charged with all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
He was facing, from memory, 7 to 9 years jail.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is really off the top of my head, so I might get the numbers wrong.
Yeah.
I think it was 7 to 9 years jail. I think he ended up getting 3 years and 4 months after Barr intervened.
Right, yes.
And it was a bit controversial that Barr intervened. Barr came over the top.
Yep.
And intervened, and his prosecutors and a couple of his prosecutors resigned. In particular, Aaron Zelensky, who was the chief prosecutor, resigned.
Zelensky, that's a controversial name.
I know. Well, it's Zelensky, I think, rather than it's not exactly the same. It's close.
Yes, yeah.
He resigned in protest, and then the day that Stone was supposed to go to jail, Trump then pardoned him anyway.
Yes.
And so he never went to jail anyway. So he was quite fortunate then. But anyway, at that time, Swalwell and Eric Swalwell and Jerry Nadler was saying they were going to investigate Stone and investigate this pardon and Bill Barr coming over the top to see if it was all proper. And apparently Stone didn't like that, because he was talking to his security guy, who was an ex-NYPD officer, in a cafe. And I don't know who was taping him. Someone was taping him.
Yep.
Maybe the security officer was taping him. Someone has leaked it to Meteorite. They haven't published it, but they've they've reported on the transcript and then given it to the police.
Yeah.
Of basically Stone was saying he was asking security guy, his name is Greco, I think, asking this Greco guy to go kill Swalwell and Loder. I'll read you the quotes.
Yeah.
Let's go find Swalwell. It's time to do it. Then we'll see how brave the rest of them are. It's time to do it. It's either Nadler or Swalwell has to die before the election. They need to get the message. Let's go find Swalwell and let's get this over with. I'm just not putting up with this shit anymore, he said. And then they talked about Zelensky. He needs to be punished. You have to abduct him and punish him. That has to be done. It'll be easy to abduct him because he's a weakling. So these are interesting conversations that Roger Stone had just when he had just gotten out of jail. He was about to go to jail and he just escaped jail. He's having these conversations which are now apparently taped. And the revelation this week is that apparently the FBI and the police are investigating these conversations. So we'll see what happens with that. But
it is the sort of thing I can imagine Roger Stone saying.
He gets angry.
Yes.
He gets real angry.
Yeah.
So that's a fun story to end off on.
Yeah, well, yes.
We got through kind of unscathed despite the smell of glue. I think maybe Roger Stone's been working in this room for a few years.
We both think that we got through unscathed.
That's true.
Who knows what we've actually been saying?
That is true.
Who knows what they've been listening to for the last 2 hours?
I am never going to watch this podcast back.
No.
I don't want to know. Dave, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Good to be back.
And we'll be doing much more catching up next week. We've got Yemen to talk about. You should look into that so you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
Got the ICJ hearing with Israel to talk about.
Yep.
We got Congress. We got the budget. They've just extended. They did. That happened a couple of hours ago. Continuing resolution as well. We'll talk about that. So much to talk about, Dave. So much catching up to do, and there'll be new stuff.
All right.
See you then.
See you then.
Stay peppy.
Bye.